Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This film is rated MA15+ for strong horror violence and coarse language. This is Kia's Reviews and this is my review of Scream 6. Scream 6 is the culmination of honouring all of the films that came before it by enticingly engaging with elements from all of the previous installments and using those stories as the key mystery in this outing's plot. As a devoted fan to the Scream franchise and having not enjoyed Scream 5 very much, I had my expectations lowered for the 6th entry into this series, but it ended up being my favourite of the franchise since the first movie. The director's radio silence learned from their mistakes and from the issues that fans had with the previous entry and worked on those aspects brilliantly to provide one of the most satisfying, enjoyable and goriest chapters in this large group of films, maintaining the franchise's great consistency. After being left disappointed with Scream 5, it was refreshing and surprising to see that the 6th movie gave me such excitement and engagement given that the story was very cleverly written, adopting a different approach to the typical Ghostface horror narrative that we've seen done 5 times before. By seemingly revealing the killer in its opening sequence, Scream 6 develops its story in a fresh new light that didn't bank on replicating the previous installments, while still maintaining the Scream legacy strongly. This is by far the bloodiest and goriest entry into the Scream franchise yet, as Scream 6 forces Ghostface to brutally inflict his terror on his biggest kill count yet. What made these kills so thrilling was how creative and unexpected they were, and while its predecessors certainly took the violence to the next level, this one goes even further and provides some interestingly nasty kills that I enjoyed heaps. As I'm a horror fan, you become very desensitized to how gruesome the violence can be, as well as the scares that come along with it. So while I didn't get particularly scared myself, this really packs in a lot of jump scares that would work on the common audience viewer seeking a thrill. As I said before, the script is unique and very clever, so these scares were pulled off very well. The intimidation and aura around Ghostface in this film felt a lot more overbearing than any of the previous outings, and whenever he was on screen, which was quite frequently, you always prepared yourself for the fact that someone was definitely going to die within the next 10 minutes. As for guessing who the culprit was, I thought I'd guessed it as Scream 5 was very predictable, and I knew who the killer was in the first 20 minutes of that film, but this definitely threw me, which was amazing. My only true reason as to why this wasn't a perfect movie for me was for the same reason that I really didn't enjoy Scream 5 all that much, and that was Melissa Barrera, as a lot of her scenes that she was involved with in this film demanded a lot of intense emotions, but she could never access that level of acting, and it really let me down from loving it entirely. Even though the story continues the narrative established from the previous movie, and continues the characters' story arcs very well, Barrera is the only performance that brought this down due to how much she felt like she was holding back, and wasn't committing to the emotional requirements of her role. Since the story from the 5th movie was continued, the bad CGI visions of Billy Loomis as Sam's father was a lot less frequent in this outing, but it still annoyed me because it doesn't exactly serve much of a purpose. While it does have more of a purpose in this chapter than the last, it still didn't feel necessary and more felt like the writers were spoon-feeding its audience information that they already knew, explicitly reminding them of Sam's heritage. By changing location from Woodsboro to New York, the setting certainly shifted just how crazily vulnerable all of the characters are when they're in unfamiliar territory, which added an extra scary layer to the film. Jenna Ortega was phenomenal and continues to be the standout cast member both in 5 and 6, and that's what makes Barrera's performance so obviously weak, because she's sided with Ortega, who gives every role she performs everything that she's got. Especially with Scream 6, this forced Jenna to get in touch with some really hard-hitting moments that were delivered perfectly through her performance. She was always enticing and her arc has evolved so well, and seeing it develop never felt out of place or uninteresting, which was brilliant to see come from the writers. I thought that the pacing was impeccable as it never contained any unnecessary sequences, and there was always a kill around the corner, so that intensity stayed frequent and never seemed to drop at any point in the progression of the story. It's very fast-paced but still develops all of its characters perfectly while also honouring the legacies of characters like Kirby and Gale from previous movies. Seeing Hayden return as Kirby after her open-ended conclusion in Scream 4 was interesting to see just how far the writers would commit to her role, but the way she was utilised in this film made me really invested in her character, and I adored feeling so many different thoughts about her character's development. The pure fun energy that emanates so clearly from Scream 6 is established from the beginning, as its opening isn't exactly replicating what the franchise is so well known for, but attempts to reshape it into a fresh new take, which also made the typically expected opening sequence that much more clever and interesting. After collaborating with her on Ready or Not, I loved that radio silence brought Samara weaving into this franchise finally, because she has an iconic Scream Queen scream that was so effective in Ready or Not that her role in the first 10 minutes of this movie elevated the experience instantly. Despite only being in the opening, she has a very prolonged effect on the audience, much like Drew Barrymore did in the original. Scream 6 definitely borrows elements from every film in this franchise, but it also honours every development that has come from the previous 5 movies too. This is a movie that will satisfy audiences a lot whether they're horror fans or not, but this is destined to resonate immaculately with fans of the Scream franchise, as there are heaps of references to all of the films that came before it within most of the sequences in Scream 6. Not only is this the most satisfying, fan-aware, and goriest entry into the Scream series, Scream 6 establishes a great mystery that does elevate this to be the best film since the original, and while it doesn't depend on a focus on fan service whatsoever, it weaves together a new chapter and its references to the previous 5 entries seamlessly. I will admit that hearing Billie Eilish's song When the Party's Over was also a special little side note for me, but out of all bias for Billie, it did suit the sequence in which it was featured, so it did make sense as to why it was used. Scream 6 certainly gives the fans heaps to feast on while also still developing a new chapter, the developments with its characters, and bringing back some of the franchise's most iconic characters to come together as a fun culmination and celebration of the Scream franchise. Even though Neve Campbell is nowhere to be seen in this outing, they still give her a reasonable plot point as to accommodate for her absence. With Ghostface's biggest kill count yet, this film is full of blood and gore and caters to the horror fans perfectly, delivering the best film of the franchise since the original. It's an absolute blast and provides one of the most fun, exciting, intense, and brutal cinema experiences of recent memory. As a fan, I couldn't be happier that this is as amazing as it is, so I'll give Scream 6 a 9 out of 10. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram for all of my latest movie reviews. This has been Kia's Reviews, signing off for now.
Don't forget to like, follow, and obey.